Hello everyone, happy All Souls Day. This is a time of putting to rest people, places, things, inner wounds, etc. that do not serve, and honoring those who have gone before us. So I hope it finds you in a place of release, in a gentle place of loving release. And I am going to be doing more live videos because it's a really good way for me to channel my medicine since I'm not doing one-on-one treatments anymore. So right now I'm inspired by a comment that was posted on my page. I shared something about co-sleeping being best for children developmentally, and a human responded, but if there's a mother whose anxiety spikes because of the coos and the movements, etc. of the baby, wouldn't it be best for her not to be with the baby or not to co-sleep? And my response is, from a holistic perspective, there are many other reasons why one would be anxious, and the baby is not the cause of the anxiety. The baby happens to exacerbate the anxiety, but what are the root reasons, and how do we treat those root causes of said dis-ease or illness? So first thing is, Western medicine has a really great way of boxing up our personal presentations and giving them as an identity. What I mean by that is, let's say, for instance, you go to the doctor because you've been experiencing some symptoms, and you go and you are late and you're trying to hurry to get to your appointment, and then you can't find parking, and then you have some coffee because you stayed up really late the night before, and then they take your blood pressure and your blood pressure is really high. They're going to diagnose you with high blood pressure in that particular momentary presentation of how you show up. But if you would have leisurely made your way, even if you would have still had your coffee, if you would have been well slept, etc., your blood pressure wouldn't have been that high, right? We are dynamic humans, constantly changing. So there's a worldview difference there that is honored in holistic wellness, as in we are people that are consistently changing. That is not necessarily or at all, depending on what doctor and what care you get and who trained them and to what end. You're not going to get that same kind of diagnosis, if you will, or dynamic ability, or the honoring of the dynamicness, the dynamic nature of your being in a Western medical paradigm. So that's one thing. So if we're diagnosed with anxiety or depression, we need to be aware of the fact that we are humans that are in constant flow and flux with our situations, with our ancestral trauma, with our personal trauma, with our belief systems, with our societal obligations, our family obligations. We do not exist in a vacuum, and all of these things are going to be influencing our particular presentation. I need to make sure I'm hydrated. I've been not drinking enough water, and I feel the difference when I don't drink enough water. And because I'm breastfeeding, when I don't drink enough water, my baby doesn't poop enough, and that's not good. So that's just an example. Like, a simple thing like drinking enough water can drastically shift your everything. Okay, so from a holistic perspective, and specifically according to Chinese medicine, there are different ways of diagnosing different patterns. We do not diagnose diseases, we diagnose patterns, as in we ask a certain amount of questions, a lot of questions, to see how the human is actually knowingly or unknowingly contributing to their symptomology and what that looks like in the body, and it's very qualitative. So one of the things we look at is there an excess or a deficiency on two sides of the coin, and is it hot or cold, yin or yang, interior, exterior? That's the eight principles way of diagnostics. In general, and I'm always say in general because nothing is for everything or everyone. different people present different ways. And even if you have the same pattern, it might not show up in the same symptomology. Okay, so let's say my pattern is blood deficiency. Since I lost a bunch of blood during birth, which did happen to me. And my blood deficiency might show up in like pallid face, like lackluster in the face, and like lack of memory, of flightiness. Someone else's blood deficiency might show up as anxiety. Someone else's blood deficiency might show up as dandruff and dry skin, okay, amidst other symptoms, right? But some, like, the reason they end up going to the doctor isn't for blood deficiency, it's for this other symptom, but it's all underlying it is blood deficiency. So that's the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to anxiety, specifically postpartum anxiety. We lose mad blood during our birthing experiences. And blood deficiency isn't necessarily the blood count of red blood cells as they check for anemia in Western medicine, but also the quality of the blood cells. So one of my teachers talked about them being like an army, like your blood cells are your army and your white blood cells are your defensive army, the first ranks, right? And it's like sometimes, even though you have enough of them, they're not really robust. They're little weak guys that haven't been getting enough to eat. That can be like our blood. So things that can cause blood deficiency straight away are losing a lot of blood, yes, lack of nutrition, thick leafy greens, red vegetables, meats in a lot of cases. I've definitely seen a lot of vegetarians present signs of blood deficiency, though not all vegetarians, because some vegetarians are smart as to how they make up for the lack of animal proteins so that they don't get that kind of blood deficiency. I've seen also really, really, really healthy vegetarians because they know how to combine their vegetables to get all the proteins necessary. So that's another way. Now, according to Chinese medicine, the blood is the yin and the qi, or the oxygen, or the anima, the soul energy, the spirit, is the yang. When we do not have enough yin, it cannot anchor the yang. So that's this idea that the blood is the mother and the qi is the child. So the qi has to be able to be with the mother and sit with the mother and anchor in to that mother energy. And if there is not enough of that yin, that blood in your body, literally, then you will have what we call floating yang, or like, and that could look like a flighty memory. That could look like somebody who you tell them 3 times and they don't remember, or they just won't be there with you. They don't, there's a heaviness that is lacking there. So that's another way of anxiety. Another way is hot. Symptoms of anxiety are hot. They move fast. They switch. They're fire symptoms. So we might have heart fire. So are you eating a lot of spicy foods? Are you drinking a lot of coffee, which again is like an upper, it makes you go? Are you burning candle at both ends? Go, 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 go. Are you working hard, playing hard? Okay, that's going to up anxiety. Another thing to look at are any kind of pharmaceutical medications you are on, because I've never treated somebody who was on pharmaceutical medications for anxiety and depression whose medication did not exacerbate, maybe not all the time, but some of the times, if not all the time, the symptoms of anxiety and depression. And it'll say there, you can check it, double check it. If you're taking them, go look on the manufacturer's insert, and the first side effects are generally what it's trying to prevent, okay? Really good to note. Yes. Also, what are you taking in? What kind of foods are you eating? Are you eating a lot of inflammatory things, which translate as fire? Personally, my fire, I'm a fire element and I tend toward fire. And ever since I was a little girl, mine shows up as like sores on my tongue, really painful sores on my tongue or in my in the insides of my lips. That's been happening since I was really little. And some people might call that herpes zoster virus, which it is. But if I am eating right, if I am not imbibing alcohol, coffee, since I quit smoking a few years ago, they're way, way less. So the more fire I have, the more fire symptoms will show. Hot temper is one of them. Anxiety is another one of them. I tend also towards strep throat, which is a damp heat condition, which I haven't had in a long time, because I know what to do dietarily and lifestylely to mitigate the heat expression in my body, because I'm quelling the fire, if you will. So these are just things to think about as far as anxiety goes. So if we go on the other end that isn't even personal or anything, we can do as somebody who works in the spirit realm, we have mad ancestral trauma and we have mad personal trauma. So I would ask a person dealing with anxiety and depression, like, when does it happen? Are there certain people around? Is it around money? Is it around the home? I know I personally get I've been doing a lot better because I've been doing a lot of personal healing, but stuff around my home gives me anxiety because I grew up in a home where it wasn't necessarily safe. So that's something to wonder about. Narratives, belief systems that you were given. Did this thing give your mom anxiety? And so does it express itself in you? Another question to ask ancestrally, like, how many of our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers were unable to breastfeed, unable to nourish their children because they were working? Look at the whole World War II baby boomers era. How many of them are the descendants of slavery? And look at what the slave trade did to mothers, and taking away their babies. That's effed up, and that shit lingers in the bloodstream, in the DNA, right? So it is revolutionary for people of color, especially post rape and genocide and slavery, to be with their children and breastfeed. My great grandmother, as I say, this is por eso mi abuelita me dijo cabrona all the time. Cabrona, because my great grandmother was fed from the goat, pecho from the goat, because her mother didn't produce milk, but her mother was also a genizaro, who was a mixed blood, indigenous and Spanish, and their people were literally made to be human walls between the indigenous, the like warrior indigenous, like the Arapaho and Comanche, and the Spanish noble people. So my great grandmother was literally like fighting Indians, even though she was part Indian, she was a mixed blood, and unable to feed her child because of the high stress, right? My teacher, comadre, hermana, beautiful indigena Mama Panquetzani, taught me that the biggest reason why one's milk wouldn't come in is lack of nourishment. You have to feel nourished and be nourished in order to create nourishment. It's this cycle, right? So one of the biggest things when we're looking at postpartum healing, or rather postpartum distress / anxiety and depression, we have completely lost the art of caring for the new mother. And I think that that's by design by Western society, so that they can actually rule us and own us and sell us products. Right? Like they're pharmaceuticals. They don't actually want us to heal with proper nutrition, because that would mean one less customer. How many less customers if we're actually in village taking care of our new mothers, right? It's insidious. So depression, also poor nutrition. If we're eating a lot of what's called phlegm foods, which is like processed sugar, bread, milk, cheese, etc., that are really heavy, and you're not balancing it with really live fibrous foods to help clear it out, you're going to have a depression that comes from phlegm, which is like listlessness, very heavy kind of depression. Alcohol can add to this. as far as I know from a friend who is like an amazing wine and alcohol connoisseur person, tequila is the only alcohol that is not a depressant. And which is funny because that's my ancestral drink of choice. My abuelito had a shot of tequila every day until he died. And that was really good for him. And I love tequilita. It's a good medicine for me. The other part of depression is the grief of becoming a new mother, the grief in general. And we're not in this society allowed to express our grief often or honestly. If someone dies, if a relationship ends, if we just lost our maidenhood, right? Like I definitely had to go through a lot of grieving, and it still comes up here and there that I was a completely boss. I was like a boss ass mujer medicina, right? Then my ego's idea of who the hell I was or was supposed to be. And now I'm like at home with the baby all the time, and I'm like not who I was. And that's hard for the ego to contend with, right? And that's okay. Like I need to give myself and my ego and my personhood permission to mourn what I am no longer. And that's okay. Now the other part of this is like, society's fucked, guys. You know this, we know this. There's like working 9-to-5 jobs and shit that we hate to pay the bills because some motherfucking asshole came and stole a bunch of land, and then they decided they own it and now they're renting it back to you when it's like your ancestors' land. Or other, different people have different stories about it. Like people, we have to pay to live here. We're the only species of anything on the planet that has to pay to live here. And it didn't used to be like that. That is part of colonialism, and it's effed up. And it's something that we all exist in. So we're all, a lot of us are in fight or flight. We're in survival mode trying to make the rent, and that is not healthy for any of us, right? So it's completely complex, and it's nuanced, and we must give ourselves space to feel our feelings so that they will shift and transform. So a lot of the times what we do is push it away, instead of like sit and like, hey, actually, why am I depressed? And then you like ask your body why you're depressed, and you see yourself being shut down for the 30th time as a 5-year-old trying to say mom, 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 and your mom's overwhelmed because she's raising 3 kids alone and on a minimum wage income, and she can't pay attention to you, and it affected you for the rest of your life. This shit is real, and those are like the wounds, the deep core wounds of why we are unable to get out of our own patterning, right? But there's healing involved. So that's to say there's also a lot of awareness that needs to come into these spaces. Like it is not enough in the article. As it said, the article was talking about babies co-sleeping being best for baby, which is developmentally sound as far as like baby's subtle sense of touch and smell and sight, etc. Developing babies feeling safe emotionally. If you just let a baby cry, like it's like there's this anxiety that comes into them that will never really leave, right? Also something this article talked about is the inability for humans to create intimate places with other humans, and that makes so much sense, right? I was breastfeeding my kid naked the other day. My baby daddy's walking around naked, and it's like such a surprise that the machine has done such a good job at making us believe that it is unnatural for humans to be physically intimate with one another. It is the most natural thing for humans to be physically intimate with one another, as is proven by the mechanisms of breastfeeding and like the bond there and the closeness there, without sexualizing nudity, right? Let's see what else. I have notes because I just go off. Okay, depression, anxiety. What about the people you surround yourself with? You know, like you can see someone who brightens up your day and they will just shift your whole mood, right? But like, do the people you live with, are they bummers? Are they assholes? Are they straight up abusive to you? Do you have a supportive system? Do you have a partner who's helping you? Are you well fed? Are you doing bone broth? Are you doing atole? Are you doing fermented foods to help your gut flora? If your gut flora is off and full of all kinds of dominating bad bacteria that only crave pasta, that's going to make you depressed, and it's also going to shoot up your heat, which could create anxiety. Do you have proper help? Ancestral trauma, personal trauma. We went about that. Lack of support. Okay, here's another one. As according to birth, there's a diagnosis in Chinese medicine that's called heart and kidney not communicating. And here's heart and your kidneys are down. And it's basically like when you have this separation, almost like right in the middle of your body, of your upper part and your lower part. So these are people who might trip over a lot of things, who aren't aware of the lower half of their body. Like I treated a patient once and they were like, where I was asking where they felt a certain something, and I was about to needle their leg, and they were like, no, closer to me. But their leg is still me, right? But they were so disassociated from the bottom half of their body that closer to them was closer to the upper part of who they are, upper part of their torso. So kidney and heart not communicating, you will get a lot of anxiety. A lot of women have huge menopausal symptoms in this diagnosis. It's very prevalent in women who've had cesarean sections because the scarring is so intense, and the like the disassociation. Also women or people who've had sexual trauma, the disassociation from the lower part of your body like is a survival mechanism to do that in order to keep it sane up here, because if you were to feel in to the trauma stored in your womb and vagina, it would be too much. So same thing when you have C-sections, there's like this disassociation, and it's the same kind of thing about anchoring down. So some things that can help that are breathing into your, like if you're sitting up, breathing into your sits bones, breathing into your lower belly, breathing into your womb area, touching, holding, rubbing your feet, doing foot baths, but giving yourself permission to anchor your energy. So, once again, I am not going to deny that it is an extremely privileged position that I hold in so many ways, from being raised in a way that would, like I was raised in the hood in an abusive household that made me study my ass off, because being in this house where people are fighting, that got me to Stanford, that got me to open my mind in a different way, that then led me to Chinese medicine school, because I had this lover who was Chinese and totally into Chinese medicine, and Creator gave me tools, right? It's super privileged. I also was raised in ceremony of my indigenous ancestors. That is also super privileged, because my mother and her generation fought in civil rights to have that. Okay, and those are also grounding ways, like doing danza azteca, pounding my feet into the earth, like moving my body and sweating and praying at the same time is extremely grounding and therapeutic. That's a privilege. My Chinese medicine degree, having taken out a bunch of student loans to get it, super privileged. So I'm not saying these things are easy. These things come with a lot of sacrifice. I have so much student loan debt. I have spent thousands and thousands of clinical hours addressing these things in myself and other people. So it's a lot of work. So I'm going to leave you with a story that addresses this work. I was in New York, and I was doing work in New York. I had some patients out there. Man, big cities will do a number on your ability to anchor and ground. Let me tell you. And I was leaving New York, and I started talking. My flight was delayed 3 times. I was sitting and waiting. I had been staying with my best friend from childhood, so today's her birthday. Happy birthday, Ale. I love you. Mwah. And she lived like 10 minutes away from the airport by car, so it wasn't that far. And then my baby daddy, my sweet love, was leaving the next day to Burning Man. And so I'd been gone for a week and he's gone for 2 weeks and I wasn't going to see him. So I was trying to like get back. I was trying to rush so I could spend the night with him and then he could go and it'd be all great. Anyways, I start chit-chatting with like this 5-year-old. I went to some portal. There's portals in New York. And when I looked up at the clock, it was time for my plane to take off. I literally missed them calling my name. I missed the, everyone, da-da-da, this is the flight, da-da-da, boarding now. And the moment it took off, it's like my body felt it. And I looked up, I was like, oh, and I was just chit-chatting with this cute little 5-year-old. But I ran to the counter and I was like, they're like, we called you. And I started getting a panic attack. I'd never before had a panic attack, but it was exactly like my patients who do have them talked about, where like things started getting black. I started like hyperventilating and the world started closing in. And I remember, granted, again, this is the story because I have these tools. I remember feeling my body start like, I got tachycardia. I was like, I was like, holy shit, this is intense. Oh my God. And then my body started taking over symptomatically. And then I realized what was happening. And I told myself, you're fine. There's nothing wrong. You just missed a plane. You're okay. And I made myself take a deep breath. And my symptoms literally came back to normal. And it was like I caught myself in a panic attack. But had I not had the tools to understand what was going on in my body, I would have let it take me, right? And so I deep breathed and I was like, I can just take a cab. It's $15 cab ride back to my friend's house because I missed my plane, and catch the next one out in the morning and I'll still be fine. So we are dynamic humans and we are able to address our stuff with the help of other people. And that's where Village comes in. So basically, you guys can go ahead and look on my my wall and the comments. And I answered the comment about this. Like, no, I can't say that I think it's best for anyone to not co-sleep, because I think the baby misses out on a lot of developmental needs from co-sleeping, even if that's just with siblings. But I will say that this society is effed up and we do not have proper support systems for new mothers. We do not have proper village support systems for anybody. We don't have proper dietary anything. It's expensive. It takes time to cook well. It takes the understanding of it. And at every turn, somebody's trying to give you some kind of some kind of stimulant or some kind of depressant. Without the holistic understanding of how those things affect us. So I hope this was helpful for you. Thank you for listening. I'm going to be doing probably a lot more of these. Please feel free to share them. I'm going to, my love was telling me I should probably do them shorter so they'd be more digestible. But if you feel called, please share this far and wide. If you feel called to support me, my Venmo is eutimia-montoya. My Gmail is eutimia@gmail.com for PayPal, and my Cash App is Muse Medicina. You can also support me monthly on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Muse Medicina, and I'm doing a better job now of when I make a video, I will put it on Patreon, so it's like a library of all my stuff. And that's just a way for you to consistently support me, starting as low as $2.22 a month. So yeah, thank you for listening. Please, I'm going to put a plug in if the new cohort just began. But as far as postpartum care goes, y'all, postpartum is extremely important for health of baby and mother. And our art of postpartum care has been lost. But I do have a dear friend, sister, comadre, maestra, Panquetzani of Indige Mama, who is teaching a 9-month modular online postpartum class. And she's postpartum herself right now, but she also does in-person weekend immersion postpartum classes. that are all about nourishing, the art of nourishing the new mother. There's also a book that's called The First 40 Days that I highly recommend. A lot of it's nutritionary, guys. We need to get our calories and our vitamins and our minerals, especially post-baby. So one of the best ways you can do that is get some molasses and take a teaspoon or a tablespoon of molasses a day in warm water to get those iron levels up so you're not blood deficient, so you're not... Okay? And also be gentle with you. Be gentle with you. These things are nuanced. These things are complex. These things are ancestral. These things are personal. For the survivors of all different kinds of traumatic events, the healing is deep and the healing is ugly and the healing is real. And we need to be willing to go to those places in order to heal. And the healing starts with us, and we help our ancestors and our descendants heal as we heal. So let's always remember that our symptoms are just symptoms. What are the root causes of those? And that's what we need to heal. Okay? Have a wonderful day, wonderful evening. Stay safe. Enjoy the veil thinning. Create some intentions. It's time. It's a new year, y'all. All right. Ciao.